Good day, everybody. Welcome to CX Excellence Chats with Anjali, the podcast that's all about transforming your business through the power of customer experience. I'm your host, a customer strategy consultant with a passion for transforming business outcomes using a customer-first approach. Our guest today is an amazing lady, a CX veteran all the way from California, US. Annette Franz. Welcome, Annette.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to our conversation. It's going to be a good one. We have a lot to cover.
Yes, we will. We will. So let me introduce you first. Annette is the founder and CEO of CX Journey based in the Orange County, California. And she founded this organization in 2011, which makes her one of the foremost proponents of this discipline. Her firm helps in building CX strategy and also in driving culture transformation in organizations. She started her career in research and built many VOC programs before venturing into journey mapping and workforce management. She also became a prolific writer, blogger, and speaker at CX events. Annette is the author of 4 bestseller books on Amazon. There's one on customer understanding, which is how you put the customer at the heart of the business. There's one, this is called Built to Win, which is designing a customer-centric culture and values for the business. And then there are 2 books which sound counterintuitive, but reasons not to focus on culture and not to focus on customer journey, which we will delve into more later. She's also created Xperia Summit, bringing together CX thought leaders, and co-founded Insight Wave that creates immersive learning programs on CX. That is a whole 30+ year career dedicated to build CX in American companies. Hope you'll enjoy this. And I hope I said everything right. If there's something you want to add or correct, please go ahead and do that now.
No worries. Not doing Xperia Summit anymore. That was a couple of years ago. But yeah, absolutely. It's been a long 30+ years in this profession. So yeah, no, it's been great. It's been one of those things where, back when I started this profession, we didn't even talk about customer experience. We talked about satisfaction and loyalty, and, experience really just became a term, probably 10 years later, where we were just really talking about the whole, and, all encompassing in terms of all the interactions that a customer has with the brand. So it's really evolved. And even since then, it's evolved even more. So it's been a really cool experience just to see how this discipline has evolved and where we are today and where we're headed tomorrow. So exciting. Thank you.
Absolutely right. I still feel that every time I speak to someone, the definition for CX in their head is different. So, it's that evolution and, interpretation of what it means to them that continues to vary and evolve. So at the very outset, I'm intrigued about these 2 books that we mentioned, which is, and why do you say there's reasons not to focus on culture or on journey? And what's really your perspective and how do those frameworks work?
Yeah, it's interesting because when Nick Glimsdahl reached out to me, or when I, first saw the books that he had done prior to that, I was like, this is really timely for where we're at right now, when we're not talking about employee experience and we're not talking about culture, and we're not talking about journey mapping, and we're not talking about the customer journey. And so we just brainstormed and we said, hey, let's do a couple books that sound counterintuitive, make people go, what's going on here? And really, ultimately, they're books, but they're really notebooks, right? They pose questions. They're really conversation starters, and they're notebooks. They really are notebooks where, we pose questions in every chapter for, part of, for each book, for, the framework for that book. And we want people to just take notes and to have conversations and to jot down ideas. And what are we going to do? And how are we going to address these items that, for example, the reasons not to focus on, culture. There's no reason for any of the books. There's no reason not to focus on these things, right? But let's have some thought-provoking questions that we can start conversations and get people thinking about how do we develop a strategy around that. So I'm hoping that that's exactly what these books have caused people to do.
Got it. Got it. So it's less reading and more doing books.
More doing, yes. And that's a shortcoming in the customer experience world, right? We hear from customers, we have all this feedback, we have all this data, we have all these things, but and then we're paralyzed. We need to act on what we have. So yeah, absolutely. It's a very good analogy for that.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, talking about Indian companies, most businesses have very great intent with regard to customers,
Yep.
but almost always do not have a well-articulated experience strategy.
Right.
What could be the potential pitfalls that you've seen over the years of, not articulating it out specifically?
Well, I think that's a great question. I think there's several things, right? So I think a lot of companies focus on the metrics. So focusing on the metrics when they start to develop that strategy, it's like, oh, great, we're getting feedback from customers. So, NPS, customer effort score, even, average handle time and the contact center metrics, those kinds of things. So they focus on the metrics rather than focusing on the experience. So I think that's a big area or a big challenge that companies need to pay attention to when you're thinking about the customer experience strategy. I think another one is around, you know, finding customers for products, not products for customers. And that's all about taking the time to really, so finding customers for a product is over here, not products for customers over here. This one over here is about, we think we know what's best for our customers. And so we develop products for them and then hope that they will buy them and use them the way that we think they ought to use them, versus over here where we're finding products for customers is we've taken the time to do the work and understand them and design and deliver the experience to solve their problems and to help them achieve what they're trying to achieve. So that a big differentiation there. Really realizing that the employee experience drives the customer experience. And so taking the time up front to focus on the employees and taking care of the employees and taking care of their needs. And then realizing that the employee experience drives the customer experience. I think those are some of the key pitfalls when it comes to not only articulating, but acting on a strategy that you've developed for customer experience. Because if you don't think about these things, it's gonna fall short, right? And I think probably the last big thing that ends up happening is that, and I actually heard this from somebody today too, in a conversation that I had just today, was that culture really is the foundation. And people don't think about the importance of corporate culture to both the employee experience and the customer experience, and what it means when you don't have the right culture, that you can't deliver the experience. You're just not going to have the organization, all of it, the people, the processes, all of that in place to design and deliver the experience that they expect and deserve.
Got it. Got it. I also read you talk about something called the water analogy, that it's like
Mhm.
yeah, you want to delve into that a little bit?
Yeah, there's this, and I think what you're referring to is the "What the hell is water"
Mm,
speech by David Foster
yeah.
Wallace. He tells this story, which I think it's really a good analogy for what we tend to experience here in this customer experience profession. Is he says these two young fish were, swimming along, and they happened to meet an older fish swimming the other way. And the older fish nods and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" And the two younger fish say, "What the hell is water?" And that's where, if you think about that, that's where we want to be when it comes to the customer and customer experience. It's just the air we breathe or the water that we breathe, and for fish, breathe, let's put it breathe.
Yeah.
Like it's our environment. It's what we do day in and day out. And how do we get to that point that we say, what the hell is customer experience, right? Like we talk about the customer and customer experience, but really we're in business for the customer and because of the customer. And so how do we get to that point where we don't even think about the customer experience? We don't even talk about the ROI of customer experience. We don't even talk about why are we doing this? We know, everybody knows that we're doing this because It's why we're in business, and it's how we're going to succeed in business is because we're going to focus on the people. So I think it's a great analogy. Absolutely.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's like being omnipresent and, you just kind of take
Yes,
it for, yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you give a thought on this interesting thing about finding customers for your products and not products for your
Yes.
customers. And
Yeah.
I think I kind of a little bit segue into that to see, how have you seen that being embodied in American organizations? Are there any specific examples you could give or, where people have practiced that form of centricity?
It's a challenge. And first of all, I'll just step back and say that is a Seth Godin quote, and I love it because it really summarizes what we think of or how we should be thinking about the work that we do as customer experience
Mm,
professionals. But it's a challenge. And if I think about companies here in the US, I get asked a lot, hey, hey, Annette, will you take a look at our software? Hey, will you tell us what you think of our software? And one of the first questions that I ask them is, what problems are you trying to solve for your customers? And they'll be like, oh, that's a really good question. I never
mhm,
even thought about that. And I think that happens more often than not. I'm just a I'm just a test sample over here, but I think it does happen more often than not where people don't think that way. And so I don't have great examples from here in the US
Okay.
where companies are absolutely doing that. There are, I'm sure, but in my experience, I haven't seen that. And I think that tide has to shift. And I think
Mm,
that will be a huge success factor for a lot of organizations, right? Because if we're not, when I'm out there speaking, and I was just at a speaking engagement earlier this week, and I had this slide that I put up around customer understanding and why understanding is so important. And it's a visual of a sidewalk system where you can get from point A to point C, you can get from point B to point C, but you can't get from point A to point B because there's no sidewalk there. And so what ends up happening is pedestrians have created their own path. So there's a dirt path getting you from point A to point B. And I think that's what ends up happening when brands don't listen to customers and really understand what customers are trying to do. And then customers end up buying products or using products that sort of meet their needs, but don't. And then they kind of work their way around it and use them to fulfill their needs, again, sort of, and then get frustrated because they aren't the types of products that actually do what they need them to do. And so I think that's a huge problem. But there are, I say that, but then you go back and you say, okay, well, let's look at Apple Music, for example. Apple Music,
mhm,
they solved a problem for customers. Customers wanted one song off of an album and they didn't want to pay $35, $40 for an album. So Apple Music, you could get one song, pay, 99 cents, $1.29, whatever it is, and get that one song, right? So Apple Music solved that problem. They said, you don't have to buy a whole album. You can just get the song that you want. Airbnb, hotels were not solving the problems or doing the jobs that that customers wanted them to do, and the pricing and their policies and the things that their inflexibility. So Airbnb said, we're going to solve for that, and we're going to offer this service, and we've got these great hosts that will offer this service. So there are examples out there where
yeah.
brands have taken a look at an industry and said, this doesn't work for customers. This isn't what customers want right now. We're going to turn that around and we're going to fix that. And so two examples,
Yeah.
but I've got more, but yeah, absolutely. There are,
Yeah.
there are brands out there who have solved problems for
Yeah.
customers and have found products for customers rather than customers for their products.
I totally
Sorry,
agree.
I got
I think
really passionate about that all of a sudden, but
no, no, no. It's good. That's exactly what we love about this, isn't it?
yeah,
Actually, we've even seen
absolutely.
auto companies and FMCG companies pivoting
Yes.
their products and actually doing a lot of innovation workshops and customer deep immersive sessions to understand where
Yeah.
exactly we move next. I think some of those examples do exist in the world
Yeah.
around us.
Agreed.
Wonderful. So, a little bit changing tune, customer understanding. You talked about that That's really the
Yep.
cornerstone of CX and forms the basis for all programs that spin off of it.
Yep.
Broadly, of course, it's expectations versus, actual performance, and that leaves you somewhere on that scale of satisfied to dissatisfied or whichever other measure.
Yeah.
But in your advice, and you've done this multiple times, what are the good tools or practices or mix of tools and practices that B2C companies would ideally use?
Yeah, and I'm assuming you're looking for tools around customer understanding, and it is, to your point, it is the cornerstone of customer centricity. It's the cornerstone of building this organization around the customer. And I define customer centricity as organizations make, there's no discussions, no decisions, no designs without bringing the customer voice, without asking how this is going to impact the customer. How's it going to make her feel? What value does it deliver? What problems does it solve for her? And so, I say that there's 3 ways to do that, right? You listen, you characterize, and you empathize. You listen, and that is all about feedback, whether it's solicited or unsolicited, however you ask or however customers want to leave feedback for you. And then the breadcrumbs of data that customers leave behind as they interact and transact with the brand. And I think tools around that are, having a great, unified data platform, having a platform where, customers where you can bring all customer feedback into one platform and make sure that you can get it out to the people who can use it. You've got the analytic tools and, those kinds of things. Characterize is all about building personas, really taking the time to interview your customers, talk to them, understand them, find out their pain points, the problems they're trying to solve, the jobs they're trying to do, and develop those personas and get those personas rolled out to your employees so they can really understand who your customers are and what their needs are, and how do we design an experience that meets those needs. And then finally, empathize is about journey mapping that whole process, and capturing what the customer is doing, thinking, and feeling from some interaction from point A to point B, and then not forgetting about the service blueprint, right? Which is what's happening behind the scenes, the people, the tools, the systems, and the processes to support and facilitate the experience that they're having. And I think that's such a robust couple of tools there to really help us understand the customer, the experience, how we're performing against their expectations, and all of that, and what their expectations are for the experience going forward.
Sure, sure. So you talked of journey mapping right now, and I think your company is also called CX Journey. So I assume that would be a large part of the work that you do. And it's not daddy word, fairly nascent as we see in usage here. Would you like to share some examples or maybe even tips on how CX professionals can see the upside and sharp results from doing a journey mapping, and how that can really get them closer to their deliverables and business outcomes, really? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the important thing is, I'll start from the beginning, right? Because I think the important thing is that you have that executive commitment and the budget in place to do something with what you uncover when you do the journey mapping. And I'll just throw it out there. I have talked clients out of doing journey mapping because the foundation isn't there, right? They don't have the executive commitment. They don't have the budget. So they're just going to do this work to check a box, right? And it's just not the right approach, because you're wasting everybody's time if you don't have those pieces in place. Beyond that, once you do the work, I think it's really important to, follow my 6-step process, right? So the first step is planning. What's the scope of the map? Why are we doing this? Who's going to be involved? What personas are we mapping? That kind of thing. Then the second step is going through and doing the mapping workshop and making sure we capture what the customer is doing, thinking, and feeling across those interactions. And then from there, we identify the key moments of truth and the root causes of some of the issues and those kinds of things. And from there, we go into I call it introspect, right? Doing the future state mapping and talking about what's the desired experience for our customers and mapping that out. And then ultimately, putting together a plan and doing the work and launching and training the employees on the new experience that they're going to deliver and those kinds of things. So, and also, sorry, I skipped a step I talked about earlier, but we got to do that service blueprint. What's happening inside? And I think this is a really important step that a lot of companies overlook. What's happening on the inside, the people, the tools, and the systems and the processes that are creating and facilitating the experience that customers are having. So taking that whole holistic view of that process and going through and doing all that work is so important to making sure that everybody understands the experience and redesign it and fix where, at the heart of where the issues are happening. So really important that you go through that whole process. And I think I answered your question, but feel free to ask me
No, no,
anything else about that.
yeah, no, I'm just going to do a follow-up on that just to say that what kind
Oh,
of
sure.
outcomes have you seen people have through this process? So has
Yeah.
that impacted, for instance, business results, consumer, customer, ease of journey for them, or what are the
Yeah.
other ticks? Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it, right? There's probably a couple of different like immediate outcomes, right? Number one, getting executive commitment for, we have to do this work. We've got budget. We're going to move forward with everything we want to do, right? So having executives in the room watching over these journey mapping workshops where we've got customers, this not employees doing the mapping. This is customers doing the mapping, and having executives observe and say, wow, we didn't know that we did this to our customers. And, immediately getting the commitment from the executives to do the work and get the budget and all of that to make these changes. Outside of that, if we've already got that commitment, yeah, absolutely. I've seen where it's a learning experience just for the employees who sit in on these workshops or who've never even heard any feedback from customers to go, wow, we need to make some changes. So yeah, absolutely. So number one is executive commitment, huge piece of what comes out of those journey mapping workshops. Second part of it is taking what they hear. And I've had clients who take parts and pieces of it and immediately, like, there are things that you can do that are quick wins, and there are other things that will take a lot of time because they're systemic, they're processes that are heavy lifting. So they start with those sort of quick wins where they can say, oh, okay, we need to have a checklist here. We need to do this with our customers, and then delve deeper into the process changes going forward. So I've seen it all. Absolutely. And it's been pretty phenomenal in terms of what can be done as a result of those journey mapping workshops.
No, that's fascinating. One of the key challenges we see, it's a lot in the Indian companies, but I'd like to get your perspective on how you've seen
Oh, sure.
other geographies as well, is the tendency to overvalue acquisition and undervalue retention.
Yes.
Despite I've been in retention-led businesses for over 15 years. But even in those companies or brands, I felt, the shiny object that is the new customer is somehow seems to dominate the room and the conversations and the resources, the budgets and decisions. And that's sort of, and despite knowing that it's cheaper to retain an existing customer and probably more worthwhile in terms of higher lifetime value and things like that. But how have you seen this balance play out, at your end?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely that. It is absolutely a focus on acquisition. Let's do what we can do to bring in new customers, right? Let's, promotions and discounts and free shipping and all of the things to bring in new customers, and growth is sexy, right? CEOs, executives, leaders love to hear, yes, we've brought in more customers. Yes, 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 yes. We've acquired 10,000 new customers this month, but the sad part is that there's this imbalance, right? And while they're focused on all the things that they do to bring in new customers, there's all the customers come running out the back door, right? It's the leaky bucket. It is absolutely the leaky bucket. And so And customers are frustrated. Customers know. Customers are frustrated by it too, because they're like, well, why did they treat new customers better than me? I've been with the company now for 15 years or 10 years or 5 years, but why did the new customers get all the deals and all the, cool stuff? So I've seen it time and time again, and I really think there has to be more of a balance and more of a focus on the parts of the life cycle that are most important to customers, because I think that's where retention will happen, right? Focus on that piece of the life cycle and focus on the experience there. And that will, that'll pay off in spades for, customer retention and for the business outcomes for sure.
Sure, sure. But have you seen an evolution in the, mindset towards retention, and are people giving it more focus? Maybe in some specific industries where, just minding the same customer over a period of time becomes very integral to that model.
Yeah. No, I have not.
Okay.
I have not. As a matter of fact, I just shared a story the other day with a group of folks about a client who recently told me, they go into their monthly sales meetings and they're still, holding spreadsheets in their hands, and these big spreadsheets. And they usually look at this side of the spreadsheet, which is all about, the new customers and revenue today, blah, blah, blah. He said, one day I was like, I'm going to flip the spreadsheet over and look at the back of it. And the back of it was all about retention numbers or attrition numbers, right? And it was pretty dismal. And he was like, we need to look at this side more. Why are we looking at this side? So, but I think that's that's how it is. I think, like I said, growth is sexy. There's excitement when we see like we're growing the business. We've got more customers. Nobody cares, sadly, about how many customers we're retaining and what we're doing to keep those customers. So no, I really haven't seen a shift in that. And sadly.
Okay, so it's pretty much a global phenomenon then.
Yes.
Okay, one of my favorite ones that I always end up asking is, and it's actually my favorite question to my clients first,
Oh, nice.
which is that, who owns the customer in your organization? More
Yeah,
often than not, the answer is everyone,
right.
because everyone needs to own the customer, be it sales,
Yeah,
marketing, product, even digital folks and data folks and everybody.
yeah.
So, what's your view on this? Because,
Yeah.
can everybody own the customer, or does that need to be a specific owner, and what kind of process, etc., do you sort of advocate?
Yeah, I don't know that ownership is the right word. I agree with you. And not everybody owns the customer. That's just not, but I think everybody owns a piece of the customer journey, right? So I'll go back to my definition of a customer experience. Customer experience is some of all the interactions that a customer has with the brand over the life of the relationship, and the feelings, emotions, and perceptions about those interactions. And then I always say what a customer experience is not. And I say it's not just what happens at the front line, right? It's not customer service who owns the customer. It's not sales who owns the customer. That's why I struggle with ownership or owning, right? Because everybody has some impact on the customer. Even if you're in the back office, you impact the customer experience in some way, shape, or form, whether it's something that you do indirectly or it's something that you do because you support somebody who's on the front line and interacts with the customer. So I think that's an important consideration there. And I had one other thought, and it just left my mind, but but
Okay.
I think that's important though, is that there are different people along the customer journey, and the journey is long and broad and circular and not linear and all of that. And so I think the important piece there is to remember that everybody in the organization in some way, shape, or form impacts the customer and the customer experience. I'm just not a fan of using the word ownership.
Got it. Got it. We can't get you in, Annette, and not talk about culture and values, because you're sort of one of the biggest leaders around the whole workforce management and employee centricity as a subject. So, and I know we can do like a whole podcast episode
Right?
only on
Yes.
that topic. Maybe that's for another day, but today I'm just going to sort of touch upon it a little bit and ask for your comments and views on just a few things,
Yeah, of
maybe.
course.
Please feel free to pick up the ones that you want, but I'll at least want one answered. In
Okay.
organization, we see this siloed approach a lot. So,
Yeah.
within the large structure, functions tend to work in their own little worlds with their own set of priorities, goals, and agendas, etc. A lot of the times, of course, there are times when everybody meet, but not as often as one would like it to.
Yeah.
And, employee first approach or a customer first approach is a leveler, right? It kind
Yeah.
of binds people and gives them sort of a uniformity. So maybe that could be
Absolutely.
a starting point, and from there,
Okay.
please go on and tell us how you think that can really be a game changer for organizations.
Yeah, there was a lot there. There was culture,
Yeah,
there were values, there's employee first. So
exactly. Yeah.
so I'll go with employee first. I think this is an important concept that employees, so if we're going to put customers first, employees have to come more first. It's because the employee experience drives the customer experience. It's because employees are the heart of the business, right? If we don't have employees, we don't have anybody to design, build, sell, service, implement, install, deliver, the products and services, right? And so without employees, we don't need customers. What's the point of that? And so I think it's such an important piece that I've heard from so many organization leaders that where they're like, oh, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you told me that because I didn't even think about that. And you just kind of smack your head
Mm,
and you say, what? How did you not think about the fact that employees are the ones who deliver the experience for your customers? And so I think that's such an important thing for people to remember. And the employee experience drives the customer experience. There are so many statistics and reports and research and those kinds of things out there that prove that point, that if you put the employees more first and you take care of them, they will take care of their customers. And I don't know if that answered your question, but I think it's such an important thing that everybody has to remember. And I think people forget about that.
yeah. So I think my question was also around, does it help break down silos in the organization when you get that unified approach? Yeah.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So going back to the culture,
Mhm.
a customer-centric culture really is a culture that is a collaborative culture, right? And that is all
Mhm.
about breaking down the silos, because if we're going to put the customer
Mhm.
at the heart of everything we do, then everybody has to be aligned around that, right? Everybody has to be aligned around the customer. Everybody has to be aligned around the goal that
Mhm.
we're driving towards, great customer outcomes, because that leads to great business outcomes. And so in order to do that, we have to all work together. We have to break down those silos, or we have to connect the silos. We have to share data. We have to share information. And if we don't, customer expectations are for that consistent and seamless and personalized and all of it, but the experience can't be consistent and seamless if we're a fragmented organization, right? We have to all be working together. We have to all be sharing data and sharing information and sharing in order to ensure that the customer experience is a consistent and seamless experience from channel to channel. So very important that we develop this customer-centric culture and this customer-centric organization to achieve that outcome.
So what would be your top three guidelines with regard to employee orientation? You talked about employee centricity. So back to that, to those just starting out on their workforce management, roadmap.
Yeah. So I think I think one of the most important things that we have to remember is that orientation and onboarding are two completely different things, right?
Yeah.
Orientation is really about an introduction to the organization, whereas onboarding is around integrating the employee into everything that we do. So I think that's a very critical
Mm,
component. And I laugh because years ago, I wrote an article about employee onboarding and customer onboarding, and somebody bashed me out on social media and said, why do we need another term? It's just orientation. Don't talk about onboarding. And it's like,
mm,
first of all, onboarding has been around since the 70s. And second of all, they're two very different things. And so I think that's so important. So orientation and onboarding, I think that's critical for workforce management and bringing employees on board, getting them set to work within your organization. I also think that, that what we talk about and the things that we ingrain into our employees during that process, during orientation and getting them set up and onboarding, getting them set up to, be a productive member of society in our organizations, right, is around, the core values. They've got to be, understand the core values. They've got to understand what it means to live and breathe those values and how they translate from values to how we do things around here. So I think that's important. I think that there's a really important component there around making sure that employees understand what it means to deliver a great experience. So we always need to make that connection to, yes, we're here, we belong to this organization, but why are we here? We are here because we are, building, delivering, selling, whatever we're doing, and solving problems for our customers. And so I think that's always a huge component at the very beginning of an employee's tenure with an organization, to make sure that they really understand why we're here and what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we're doing it and what our vision is for the experience for our customers as well.
Yeah, I think you picked up on some very, very important ones. I really like the one on the values. I
Oh
think
yeah,
that kind of defines a lot of
yeah,
common and shared beliefs that we operate from,
yeah,
principles that of what we're delivering together, yeah, and so on. I've also seen, empowerment as another important guideline,
yes,
especially for the front
yes,
line, because a lot of the times we waste a lot of time in escalations and seeking resolutions
yeah,
and approvals. But if we could have more SOPs around empowering the
yes,
frontline in contact with the customer,
yeah.
I think that would kind of ease out everyone's lives,
Yeah,
especially for the.
drop the script, drop the script and just educate and empower employees to do what they need to do to do the
Yeah.
right thing for your customers. And I was in a client meeting just a couple of days ago,
Mm.
and there was a conversation around something, I forget specifically what it was, and one of the gentlemen in the meeting says, oh, we need to develop a script for our employees. And I just felt like the hair on the back of my neck stand up when they said we need to develop a script, and it was like, no, we need to empower them, like give them the information, give them the authority, give them what they need to do the job and to serve their customers the way that they deserve to be served, and step back from that. I think a script really confines people to, what's in this box here, but doesn't allow them to step outside of that. And so if a customer has an issue that's just outside of the parameters of that box or the walls of that box, they go, no, sorry, can't solve your problem, can't handle what you're talking about, don't know what to do, I have no idea. No, this. And I've been on those calls. I've been on those calls where I've heard the agent on the other end say to me, I this is what I can do. This is all I can do for you. And it's like, okay, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about something just a little outside of that. Well, I can't do anything else. This is all I'm allowed to do, and it's sad because it's just so easy. It's just so easy to see what the agent or the salesperson or whoever it is on the phone could very easily do if they were just given a little bit of, if
Yeah.
they were just empowered to do what was right for the customer. So
Yeah. I also think makes them less robotic and more human, because
absolutely,
you're operating
absolutely.
from the heart and from the principle
Yeah.
rather than operating from words, a few
Yeah.
words. Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. 110%.
Okay. Okay. One very big one, actually,
Okay.
before we sign off, which is that, one of the big grouse that CEOs or CFOs commonly have with regard to CX is the
Yeah.
ability, or rather the lack of the ability, to prove ROI of CX initiatives.
Yeah.
And that's one of the pet peeves for which the investment in CX programs is usually lower than one would ideally
Right.
want. How have you seen this play out? And have we also been able to prove the ROI? Has it been achieved well
Yeah.
by organizations and so on? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things or two of the things that folks need to do is really appeal to the left and the right side of the brain of the executive, right? It's the analytical and the emotional, the numerical and the emotional side of the brains of the executives, right? We need to be able to on the emotional side, tell the story, help them walk in the customer's shoes, help them feel what customers are feeling when they're interacting with the brand. And I've seen this. We take them through the journey mapping workshop. We take them through customer comments. We take them through a lot of those kinds of things, and they're just floored because they're like, oh, I didn't know we did this to our customers, right? They had no idea. On the other side, it's the numbers, it's the analytics, it's the quick wins, it's building the business case. And I worked with a client in the insurance industry where we followed up with every customer who was a detractor on their, ongoing their transactional survey. And over the course of the year, we saved, I believe it was 65% of their at-risk customers, and we saved, $11 million for the organization, right? And so that's not that's not chump change, that's big money, and it's real, right? If we do the work and we make changes, the outcomes are real. And so I think that's an important thing for people to consider. And I think, again, the whole point of that exercise was a quick wins. It was hey, we're doing this project here in this one area of the business. And if it proves out and it proves our point, we're moving it out to the rest of the organization, which was exactly what we did. So very powerful.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic example, because when you pick detractors, you're actually able to say that this is money off the table.
Yeah.
But by saving them,
Yeah.
we were able to bring it back on into the kitty.
Exactly.
And I think that kind of proves, because usually they're more led by, as you said, the left brain and the more numbers.
Absolutely.
Even though we may try all our tactics to get them to
Yes.
be a little bit more imaginative and creative, but I think at the end of the day, when they put pen to paper,
Yes.
they look for solid, business cases. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But thanks for bringing that out. I think that was a great example.
Yeah.
This conversation's been truly awesome, and we could continue on and on.
I know.
And I have so many more questions I could ask you, but I know that we this format allows us a few minutes to make it sort of interesting. So
Yeah.
I'm going to halt here, but I'm really going to thank you a lot. It's been an honor and a pleasure to host. So thank you for your time. I know it's not a very easy time for you right now in the US, and you've really made an exception for us. So
it's all
thank
good.
you for that. So tell me, any parting words of wisdom for our viewers and listeners?
Yeah, I think I'll just reiterate a couple things that I may have said over the course of the last, several minutes. Number one, don't forget about your employees. Seriously, don't forget about your employees. I mean, it's so important. And I think too many companies have forgotten, or too many leaders have forgotten, that the employee experience, or maybe didn't realize the employee experience drives customer experience. And number two, the culture. Culture is such an important piece. It is the foundation of the business. And the culture is ultimately going to be the thing that ensures that everybody knows how we do things around here, and there's this consistency across the organization. So don't forget about that, because it's so important. It really is. It's a critical to success is the foundation.
Wonderful. Okay, so brings it back to EX, important for CX, and I think that's a great note to sort of sign off on. So thanks then, and thanks to our viewers as well. So thanks for joining this episode of CX Excellence Chats with Anjali. I hope you enjoyed this as much as we've done talking about this. And remember, your business success begins with great CX. So until next time, keep mastering the art of CX. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, share it with your network. See you again next fortnight. Bye.